Hey guys, welcome to Yesterday's Coffee, episode 8. This is the podcast where we're talking about fitness, nutrition, and business all over coffee that may or may not have been brewed yesterday. In today's case, Alexa's got a hot cup of water. So
I'm drinking hot water because I don't want the caffeine, but I'm cold.
I've got regular coffee in my cup.
Kyle's making fun of me.
Yeah. And today we're actually touching on plateaus. So this is something that is really inevitable no matter what your fitness goal is, and something you'll run into at some point in the road, no matter how well thought out your plan is.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that everyone wants to think shouldn't happen on a good weight loss program, but it's actually completely normal and it's part of a weight loss program.
Absolutely.
I mean, we expect plateaus to happen, but that's the beauty of, a dynamic program or having a coach who then goes and adjusts the program that you're on in order for you to keep seeing progress, whatever your goal is.
Right.
But most people don't think about it that way. Most people just want this very linear progression of, this is my goal, and every week I should be further and further, closer and closer to my goal.
Exactly. And it's definitely a balancing act. So you have obviously this end goal in mind, and most people's objective is to get there as fast as possible. But on the flip side of that, when you're looking at especially these longer term goals, what you want to do is come up with a sustainable approach. And so my goal with anybody that I work with is always getting as much out of as little as possible. So whether that's from a nutrition standpoint or from a training standpoint, you don't want to have to introduce every single tool that you have at once, because eventually, no matter how good you're doing in the beginning, when you hit that plateau, you want to have other things to fall back on after that.
You don't want to run through all your tools at once and then hit a plateau too early and realize that now you're going to have to do some backtracking and it's going to take even longer to reach your goal. I think a lot of people run into that problem with weight loss goals when they jump into everything all at once.
Oh, definitely.
They cut down their calories, they cut their calories in half, and then they add in a bunch of working out. They do a bunch of cardio. They start going to the gym and trying some strength training. They take classes. They're doing 2-a-days because they have this weight loss goal. And again, you're going to see success at the beginning, but then you're going to hit that plateau, and it's going to be really, really hard for you to break past that, because for most people in their mind, the next logical step is to do more. Yeah,
you hit this. I mean, you start with this massive influx of change, right? So if somebody is trying to lose 30 pounds and they go from maybe they hit the gym once a week to, like you said, the whole 2-a-day thing. Like, we see that a lot.
Yeah, people will be at the gym for 4 hours doing 4 different classes back to back, and they're like, yeah, I'm getting married in 3 months, and I'm trying to make all this progress. And what they don't realize is that they're actually hurting themselves, because they're going to reach the point where they don't have the time, or their body physically cannot do more than what they're asking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're going
they physically can't eat less than what they've already been eating.
They're going from basically untrained to like professional athlete
level, like status,
Olympic status preparedness.
But again, that's another thing that in their mind they're thinking, well, then why don't I look like them?
Yeah.
Why don't I look like an Olympic athlete if I'm, training that way?
Yeah. So what we're really trying to say with all this is, if you've got the balance in your program to where you're steadily ramping things up and you're steadily increasing things at a rate that makes sense, what's going to happen there is you're going to see progress that is not the 10 pounds lost in a week, but a much more steady, maybe 1 to 2. And then if you have that week where the scale doesn't change, then there's a lot of easy tweaks that you can use to continue to progress beyond that.
Absolutely. Well, and again, that's the point. So on a weight loss program, which is very similar to other programs depending on what your goals are, we're starting with the smallest changes possible. We just want to see how your body is going to respond to very, very small changes. And we expect that, within a week or two, that your weight is going to level off.
Yeah, right.
And so then we're going to introduce another small change.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so again, you have to go into any sort of program expecting that your weight loss is not just going to be like a straight line.
Right. It's like the staircase.
It's a staircase, or in some cases, it's, all over the map.
A choppy staircase.
Yeah, it's a choppy staircase. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes back down. But again, if, the net change is still a loss overall, then that's what we're looking for.
Right. So, going into these fitness goals, you've just got to have the mindset of this is a normal thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that get into this for the first time and they've got a weight loss goal, especially those first of the year people that come through that first week where they don't see progress. So maybe they saw progress the first 2 weeks and then life happened in the third week and for whatever reason,
a bunch of stuff fell off.
Things didn't connect and the weight on the scale didn't drop, or maybe it went up a pound. And that derails so many people. Like that just completely wipes out everything.
It's even more discouraging. I don't know where I was going with that. I lost
but
it.
it's one of those things that once you hit that, you've got to understand that this doesn't mean just throw away everything that you're doing.
Exactly.
Right? It's like get back on track.
You have to be consistent with it.
And if something that you're doing is continuing to keep you leveled out, then there needs to be an adjustment made. And so that kind of brings us to, so you've hit the plateau. What do you do next? Mm-hmm. So first step is identifying what are you even plateaued in. So for a lot of people, it's going to be a weight loss goal. If your weight's not dropping, that's the first thing to know. And what I always ask people when they're in that position, maybe their weight's stalled out for 2 weeks, is, how are you feeling right now? So where is your energy? Are you hungry at all? And try to get like a baseline of what other relative things that are going on with them that aren't just that number on the scale.
Definitely. Well, because everything in your life is going to impact your goals. Mm-hmm. So, the two major ways that plateaus happen are energy output is too great or too little.
Yeah.
Like those are the main things that are going to cause a plateau. However, what Kyle's saying is by asking these other little questions, we're trying to identify if it's a matter of energy balance or if maybe it's that the body isn't really on the same page with us right now. Mm-hmm. So whether that's stress related reasons or whether something's going on in your life, whether that's a hormone thing, asking those little questions, we can kind of find out what category this plateau falls under.
Yeah, because all these different stressors in your life, whether it's from the training or the nutrition or your relationship or your financial status or anything, all of these play a part, especially with body composition.
Absolutely.
So if that's a main goal and you've got all these other stressors going on, there might not be a thing wrong with your training plan or your nutrition plan.
Or even your ability to follow the plan.
Right.
It might not be your effort at all.
It could just be these other things that are contributing to that. So that's definitely something to figure out. Now, if that's not necessarily the case and it is something on the nutrition or training side, then that's the next thing that we can address. Mm-hmm. And from there, we want to look at what have we been doing up to this point. So if you've been following the same diet for a couple months now and you've seen a lot of progress with it and now things are slowing down, there's something that you want to adjust there. And so that's going back to that energy balance. So you take a look at the macronutrients, how your fats and your carbs and proteins are relating to your energy and to your workload throughout the day. And you can also look at the activity that you're doing. So when I work with fat loss clients, I am typically going back and forth between monitoring changes in nutrition and changes in activity.
Because really it comes down to your routine and your schedule for us to know, or even, your appetite and your preference when it comes to food, to know where we're going to make the change. So for people who are kind of maxed out in terms of what activity they can do, then we're going to be looking more at nutritional changes. Right. Like if your schedule and the way that your day is laid out doesn't allow for us to increase your activity or to change the types of workouts that you're doing, then we'll focus on nutrition.
Absolutely.
Or on the other hand, if where, especially on a fat loss diet, if we've hit kind of a calorie amount that you feel really comfortable at, or that we're still trying to fit in certain things that you enjoy and that you like, then we might focus more on the energy side or the activity side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I'll typically go back and forth. And again, it's going to come down a lot to that person's goal, their schedule, and then what their training already looks like. So if we've got a ton of work in the training program already, then we're going to focus a little bit more on those diet tweaks. And how I even come to that balance in the first place has a lot to do with that person's preference, like you were saying. So if I'm working with somebody that wants to eat a little bit more, totally fine, but we've got to make up for that with the training side. And there, you should be able to strike a very simple balance here. So there, especially for the general person, 2-a-days shouldn't even cross your mind. Like you really
for a lot of people, it does.
Like for basic fat loss and basic health stuff, that's not even on the table.
No.
When I'm talking to somebody.
No,
about
it's
this.
not at
So
all.
if that's your first thought of like, oh my God, I've got 30 pounds to lose and I need to start doing cardio before work, and then after work I can hit the gym and do my strength training. Not to say that that's a bad thing by any means. That's an awesome setup, but you don't need to go from doing nothing to doing that.
So you do have to really keep it in perspective. I think the most important thing is, being honest with yourself and having an awareness of all of these different things.
Right.
Because the other part about just going all in when you start a new program and changing your diet completely and starting in on 2-a-days is the fact that it's not only going to burn out your body, but it's going to mentally burn you out. Like you are going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And so that's not going to keep you on track. Even if you did that, your body weight would still probably plateau just because your body doesn't know what's going on. But mentally, you probably wouldn't even get to that point. You would fall off because you would be so drained and exhausted you couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. The secret to these goals is really in sustainability. So if you look at these Instagram models, these people that are professionals in fitness, and there are some bad examples, but for the most part, these people are doing things that they can maintain in and out of their day. So for the most part, this is not everybody, but they are not struggling to stay in that type of condition.
No, that's their life.
And most people aren't even necessarily trying to get to that level. So if you find yourself in a place where you are just overwhelmed by your training, you feel like your calories are way too low, you just feel like crap, you're bored of the food, like all this stuff, you're in a position where whatever you're doing is not balanced for you.
Trust those feelings. Like, then it is wrong. Like, there's something not right there.
When things are working, it should be a fairly simple process. Now, there might be some times where you're a little bit uncomfortable. If you're trying to lose some weight, there might be some nights where you go to bed a little bit hungry. But
you should,
for the majority, but for the majority of the time, you shouldn't feel like you are just dying.
Like that gnawing hunger, like stomach eating itself type feeling. Like you should never feel that way. That's what I tell all my clients is like, on this program, like we want you to be able to lose weight eating the most amount of food, doing the least amount of activity, which sounds so counterintuitive to people, but that's ideal, right? Like that's the ideal situation. And I always tell them like, if you're ever starving on this program, like we're doing something wrong. Like you should not feel that way. You should be able to lose weight, but feel full and satisfied. And like you said, like once we get down to a certain point, there might be some times where we're starting to feel a little bit hungrier or we just kind of feel like an emptiness. But that's usually around the time that we step into a different phase and we start building our metabolism back up. So right when we hit that kind of like slightly hungry stage, that's usually the lowest that coaches will take the average person for fat loss.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
Right. It's all about finding something that you can stick with, and that intuition should be there. And this is not, you still have that situation where you're going to have to give some stuff up. So if you're used to just eating a bunch of crap all the time, that's not what we're talking about here. But finding that balance of, I don't feel like I'm hungry all day long, I don't feel like I'm overworking myself all day long, is the key to this actually working. Whenever you see people jump into crash diets and tons of exercise out of nowhere, yeah, they might lose a bunch of weight, but the reason that's not sustainable is because they've put their body in a position where they need to create that much energy expenditure and that low of calorie intake to maintain that.
Yeah.
Instead of...
Which, again, is not ideal and not
Right.
really healthy mentally or physically.
Right. So instead of gradually easing into that process, they've just made this abrupt jump. And then as soon as they stop whatever that is, your body's just going to recoup back to what it was before.
Which is the whole reason for that like weight rebound. You know, these people that fall off their diets and all of a sudden gain weight back, but maybe even more weight than they, you know, had to begin with. That's the rebound of the body being like, okay, this is not sustainable. This is not good for us.
Yeah.
You're overwhelmed. You're overworked. We're done.
Yeah. And
Like your body basically just has this moment where it's like, no, sorry.
well, a lot of times you'll just end up getting a cold or getting sick or something like that.
A lot of times.
Breakdown of the immune system. Because
Your
it's
body's
just
so compromised.
Yeah, I mean, you're not used to that, and you're just throwing all this stress at it with no food to back it up.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, so your body just kind of shuts down.
So we know that we need to make these very gradual changes when we start a program, but if you're already in this situation, so like if this is already describing you and you're feeling miserable, you're under eating, you're over exercising, there is a period that you're going to need to go through where we improve your metabolism. We kind of let your body know that everything's okay, that you're safe, that you're healthy, that we're good. And during that period of time, you won't typically see weight loss.
Correct. Yeah.
So once we've kind of already compromised your body to a certain point and you hit that plateau, you need to realize that breaking through that plateau is not going to happen quickly. So, you know, we're talking about breaking through plateaus. But if that's your situation, we're actually going to need to go backwards a little bit before you're able to see more sustainable weight loss past that plateau point.
Right. So if you're in that point where your calories are already at 1,200 a day and you're working out 5 days a week or
and doing,
every
you know,
day,
cardio
like,
and strength every single day.
I mean, which we see a lot.
A lot.
You've got to go and backtrack. So this is where, if you've ever heard of the term reverse dieting, where we're doing things the same way but backwards. So instead of trying to take away some calories each week or add in some activity each week, we're actually going to be increasing the calories each week and typically
potentially taking away some of your activity.
Taking away some of the activity at a very gradual level.
Yeah.
So the one thing that you don't want to do if you're in this kind of compromised state is just immediately throw a ton of calories back in or just cut out all your activity. Because the problem with that is you've gotten your metabolism used to the amount of work that you're doing and the little amount of calories that are coming in. So if I suddenly change that and throw a bunch of calories back into my diet, then what's going to happen is I'm going to get a huge rebound in weight gain.
Yeah.
So,
your body it still thinks that you're in a compromised state and it sees all of this extra energy available and it's going to want to put it away.
Yeah, it's going to want to store that immediately.
Because it still thinks that you're in this compromised, like emergency state of, you know, of being.
So same thing on the other side with the exercise. So if you suddenly cut out all your exercise, you're creating that caloric surplus just from the other end.
Exactly.
And so same thing applies. So what you want to try to do is instill very gradual bumps up in calories and maybe even a decrease in activity week over week and kind of monitor what's happening with your weight. So
is this going to make me gain a bunch of weight if I reverse diet?
It shouldn't. So you might gain a couple pounds here or there. You might gain a little bit. And oftentimes that's primarily from increased carb consumption.
Or just the fact that you're putting more food in your, like physical food in your body.
Right. So the increase in food overall, food has weight to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was touching on with the carbs is the more carbs you eat, the more water gets attracted into your body. So that's totally normal to see a few pounds kind of fluctuate up and down with this. But I'm talking about maybe adding an additional 10 grams of carbs per week.
Sure.
So a very small amount. And so you got to be fairly precise with what you're doing to make this build back up. But over time, the objective with this is increase your calories fairly substantially over that long period of time while your weight stays in that pretty similar window.
And again, you might go up a couple of pounds, but we're trying to keep your weight fairly stable.
Right.
So our goal is to increase your calories up to what we would consider to be like a maintenance level,
right.
like what your body needs every day to function with your activity level. So we're just trying to get you up to maintenance calories, which again shouldn't cause a crazy amount of weight gain, if any at all.
Yeah.
But like Kyle said, our goal is to improve your metabolism to put us in a better position to adjust your diet and then work our way back down in order to let your body lose that fat. Once we've given the body a break and kind of a reason to feel, I don't know, like safe and comfortable with more energy and with more calories, then you could enter another fat loss phase. But this isn't a quick process. Yeah. Like we're talking about adding, 50 calories a week, maybe 100 calories a week, maybe.
Right. This is a month. We're talking months of work here.
Months of reverse dieting. So if you come to one of us, or if you go to any coach and your body's in that compromised state and they tell you, hey, look, like this is what we've got to do to put your body in the best position, just be prepared for that. Keep that in mind of like, they do want to help you get to your goals, but they're also trying to make sure that you do it in the healthiest way possible, that you're going to feel the best.
And when you come to somebody like that, your body may not be in a position where it can really lose a bunch more fat properly. And so that's why people do the reverse diet. We have to do this. And so I've had some great examples of clients that have fat loss goals, and it doesn't necessarily have to be even a big one. So like, I've had some examples of people wanting to lose 20, 30 pounds, and the first go around of the fat loss work we do, we maybe drop 15 pounds, which is great. And then our calories are starting to get a little too low for my liking. So we'll go through that kind of rebuild phase over the course of the next month or 2 months, or maybe even 3 months, bringing those calories back up. And there have been situations where we've dropped like 15 pounds of body fat. Over the next 2-3 months, actually, we're able to bring the calories of the individual back up over where we started with their weight staying where it was, and then engaging back in that cut again. Yeah. And so that's kind of what that process looks like of cutting down, plateauing, or maintaining, so that we can revamp up the metabolism, get things moving along again, and then initiating that second half of the fat loss cut. Absolutely.
So a sustainable fat loss program, and also, a sustainable hypertrophy program or performance program is always going to have these different phases. So weight loss is not just this thing where we put you on a weight loss phase for 2 years and you're just like consistently losing weight the whole time.
Yeah.
So there has to be these phases built in, because again, you're going to hit these plateaus. We expect you to hit plateaus. We make adjustments down to the point where we feel like, we've hit a point where your calories are probably the lowest we want to take them, or your activity for whatever reason is the highest we probably want it to be.
Yep.
Then we work backwards, and then we try it again, and then we work backwards and we try it again. So you have to build in these phases to have sustainable weight loss over a long period of time.
Right. And the same exact thing for the other side. So if you're trying to build muscle, you're not just going to be on this permanent bulking phase for 4 years.
Your body can't do it. Your body can't do it.
Yeah, because you're just going to start putting on more and more and more fat over the course of that time. So what you do is you go through these phases of increased calorie consumption, and you put on steady weight, just like we would try to take weight off if it was a fat loss goal. And then once we've gotten you to a point where your body fat is starting to get up to more of a higher level, maybe in like the mid-teens, that's where we do maybe a maintenance phase and maybe even like a mini cut to kind of lean you back out, improve insulin sensitivity, and then go back into that bulking phase maybe a month or 2 later.
Yeah.
So same thing applies.
Absolutely. So with like on the hypertrophy side, is there anything else that people might run into, or anything else that people should maybe adjust if they hit a plateau?
Yeah, so volume. So again, it's all coming down to energy and nutrition and training. So with your hypertrophy work, it's very easy, especially as your calories increase, to increase your volume. And that's what you should be trying to do as you're getting bigger and bigger. But eventually that reaches a point of diminishing returns too.
Sure.
So periodizing out your training so that you've got breaks in there, whether that's a deload week or you go through phases where you drop your volume back down. In that case, you're actually creating an additional caloric surplus if your calories are staying the same because there's less workload that you're doing. So having that type of balance in that respect is just as important, but you're going to see it in the opposite way in that you're going to slowly start to accumulate body fat until you get to a point where you want to reverse that instead
where
of,
you don't want to put on any more body fat after that
instead
point.
of a weight loss point. Yeah.
So to summarize all of this, basically your body is really cool and it adapts pretty quickly. And that's the reason that we see plateaus, because your body and your metabolism adapts to whatever nutrition program or training program or whatever's going on in your life. Your body tries to adapt to any situation. So if we are trying to kind of sneak around that, we have to work in those phases, like I said. Another important thing, I think, is to make sure that you are actually following the program before you decide that you've hit a plateau. Because if our clients come to us and they're like, okay, I'm not losing weight, or I'm not making, strength gains or whatever, but then by asking some questions or checking out their food log, we find out that if
they've recorded in their food.
If they've even recorded it, then we might find out that they've maybe been sticking to the plan 50% of the time. That's not a true plateau.
No, weekends don't count, right?
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
But yeah, I mean, these types of small changes that we're talking about only work when you're accountable to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to make 10 gram of carbs increment increases each week and you are kind of fluctuating plus or minus 50 grams of carbs per day,
then that's not going to make a difference.
Then that's really not going to matter. So again, it comes down to being accountable, knowing what the plan is, sticking to the plan, and trusting in that process.
Well, because I don't have a magic answer. If you've only been sticking to the program 50% of the time, but then come to me like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah. If you don't even know what you've done,
is going to be follow the program.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if that, annoys you or frustrates you. But if you're not following the program, then I can't guarantee that you're going to see results.
Yeah.
So that's the most important part. Number one, if you hit a plateau, please evaluate if you are following the program as laid out for you as given. And then you can make adjustments after that.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you can't stick to what your initial plan is, whether or not it's perfect, like you need that reference point.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just kind of lazily going back and forth and kind of sort of doing it, then I don't know if the exercise is the issue or if the nutrition's the issue or if it's a combination of both or whatever. There's so many factors that play into that. So
and you have to be honest. You have to be honest. If you're working with somebody, if you're working with a coach, there is no reason to hide things or to lie because we're going to know if you're following it or not based on your progress.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the thing to keep in mind.
You'd be surprised, but yeah. So definitely good things to note there. So yeah, I think that's about it for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you learned a little bit about plateaus, what to do, and kind of how to have that mindset around them because you're going to run into them. It's just knowing. And
you should. That's the thing. Again, you should, but you should know what to expect and you should know why they're happening and what changes to make to push past them.
Exactly. So thank you guys for watching. We will catch you again next week. If you know anything or you have any topics that you want us to cover, any particular questions, just let us know. You can find me at HypertroFit.com. You can find Alexa at therootedrd.com. And until then, we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.